Over my 4 years in college, I think like a lot of people, I had a handful of different majors. I eventually graduated with a degree in political science, but immediately before that, my major was in social work. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I was very clearly headed toward ministry. At some point during my junior year, I was attending a conference on LGBT youth activism. I met a guy who was doing outreach work with queer youth in San Francisco who were experiencing homelessness. As a social work student, this was really fascinating stuff. I attended his workshop at the conference and we had some great conversations. Eventually, the idea came up for me to spend the summer doing an internship with him. The plan was to go to San Francisco and do administrative work and learn about grant writing. Eventually, I would branch out from the office and do some direct services on the street. I don't know if there was a miscommunication or deception or that circumstances necessitated a change. What I thought was going to be a gradual introduction to working with homeless youth was a swan dive into the deep end. This particular outreach program was a Catholic worker house. That is to say, it's very much on the ground with the people. Following the model of Dorothy Day, Catholic workers commit to voluntary poverty and embed themselves in the communities that they work with. Because the target clients for this outreach were sex workers and heroin users, the outreach happened between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. It was basically handing out sandwiches and doing needle exchange in the middle of the night. A couple of days after arriving to what I thought would be mostly an office learning opportunity, I found myself alone on the street in the middle of the night with a duffel bag of sandwiches on one arm and another duffel bag full of a sharps container and clean needles and a whole bunch of condoms on the other arm. Other adventures included taking a suicidal youth to the emergency room, visiting hospital patients that were battling AIDS, all sorts of stuff. It was completely overwhelming. One of the sharpest edges of the experience was that these were my peers in their late teens and early 20s. Many of them from across the United States had moved to San Francisco after being rejected from their families for being gay or transgendered. Sheer luck separated my experience from theirs. As I said, I was overwhelmed, unable to process the emotional impact of it all. I sort of shut down. I just made a lot of bumbling mistakes and socially isolated myself. The internship fizzled, and for my own mental health, I returned home to Oklahoma early. Sometimes the best lessons in life are what not to do. Didn't willingly dive into this situation. I was more thrown into it, but still the lesson emerges. We cannot serve other people without attending to our own emotional needs. And easing in is a much better approach. Part of my motivation behind this sermon is my hope that we will soon have more opportunities to ease into working directly with our neighbors experiencing homelessness. You've probably heard Tapestry's Welcoming Neighbors Home campaign is doing amazing work with policy analysis and advocacy. We have a team of volunteers monitoring the activity of South Orange County cities, looking at every city council agenda to see anything that could possibly relate to homelessness or housing. We've sent detailed, and I mean really detailed, recommendations to our neighboring cities about their plans to build adequate, affordable housing in the future. With the help of many of you, of Tapestry members, we've convinced the city of Lake Forest to move forward with an affordable housing project. And we're currently in a campaign to get more affordable housing included in the upcoming Laguna Hills Mall redevelopment. I have been blown away by the wisdom and dedication of volunteers in their mission to end homelessness in South Orange County. Once again, Tapestry's name is getting recognized as a formidable force for justice. And yet, in a very important way, it's not enough. It's okay. I talked about this with our leadership team. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. Our advocacy efforts are not enough. We cannot fully understand the problem or do our best to solve it without getting to know the people who are directly impacted. Due to COVID-19 this year, we haven't been able to directly engage with people experiencing homelessness very much. We've been able to provide dinner once a month for the Friendship Shelter in Laguna Canyon, but because of COVID, volunteers are no longer able to serve those dinners. Hopefully those rules will change soon and we'll be able to return to serving meals. We're looking into another opportunity, though, to get to know our neighbors experiencing homelessness through the organization Family Promise. They're the recipient of our sharing our gifts. They offer short-term housing for families in local churches. And because our building is in a business park, we can't really host that sort of thing at Tapestry, but we can partner with other congregations as they host a handful of families to stay at their church overnight. We can provide meals, we can entertain their kids for a little while, and a whole range of other ways of hosting. And hopefully soon, our volunteers will be able to return to serving dinner at Laguna Canyon. Whether the issue is homelessness or immigration, women's rights or anti-racism, or probably even environmental justice, we can't make meaningful change in the world unless we're willing to get close enough to the issue to be changed ourselves. And opening to that kind of change is best done carefully. I do not recommend diving into the deep end if you can avoid it. Growing squarely out of Buddhist tradition, mindfulness invites us to be aware of all our full range of experiences in every moment. What sensations are we receiving from the world outside of us, and what thoughts and feelings are occurring in our mind? We're invited to notice all of it without judgment, the good, the bad, the ugly, without trying to change it immediately. What's going on in that body and that brain? If we're honest, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. A lot of what's going on inside is suffering to varying degrees. You see, mindfulness gives us an opportunity to become less afraid of the reality of suffering in the world. Rather than being triggered into despair or denial, we have an opportunity to ease our way into compassion. This year, I've had a wonderful time leading our Wednesday night meditation group. And I want to acknowledge that for some people, meditation simply doesn't work. In this month of mindfulness, I don't want you to think I'm saying you must meditate or that it's good for everyone. Mindfulness isn't just about meditations, it's really about paying attention every day. So each week in our meditation group, I try to bring a different concept or skill that we can incorporate. It's been a great way for me to explore different ideas. And one of my favorite meditations so far really resonates with what we're talking about this week. The meditation asks you to call to mind a very particular person and then proceed through a series of ways of connecting with compassion. I want to read a few of those. Of course, this goes much more slowly when you're meditating, but um, this is sort of how it goes. Holding a particular person in mind, think to yourself, this person has a mind and body just like me. This person has feelings, emotions, and thoughts just like me. This person has at some point been sad, disappointed, angry, hurt, or confused, just like me. This person has experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering just like me. This person has experienced moments of peace and joy and happiness just like me. This person wishes to have fulfilling relationships just like me. This person wishes to be healthy and loved just like me. I love that meditation because it invites us to honor the full experience of another person as well as our own. Too often, when encountering difference, especially when we perceive hardship or pain, we move into pity. Oh, that poor, unfortunate soul, we say. But pity is a dangerous place to be. Pity can make us feel guilty for our good fortune. It can make the problem seem so fundamental that it's hopeless to act. And probably worst of all, pity creates a chasm between ourselves and another person. At the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all want to be happy. We all experience suffering. We all have bodies in various states of repair or disrepair, all of which will eventually give out. Observing the full range of life experience, of our own lives and the lives of others that we encounter, can help us bridge the distance and to be less overwhelmed by suffering. As you probably know by now, one of the core principles of Buddhism is that suffering is a pervasive experience of our lives. Some teachers extrapolate from that idea that everyone's suffering is the same. And I want to be really clear about this. Acknowledging our own suffering and the suffering of people living without homes does not make our suffering the same in either intensity or quantity as theirs. Without diving into the oppression Olympics, as some call it, without trying to outline a hierarchy of suffering, it's important to recognize that our encounter with hardship and the emotional toll it takes is not the same across the board. Whole communities have been ravaged by systemic oppressions. And some people struggle with a variety of mental illnesses, which can make life exceptionally scary or sad. We don't all suffer the same way or in the same amounts, but we do all suffer. Every one of us. Both the person without a home and the volunteer serving the dinner at the shelter. The suffering isn't the same, but it's a gateway to compassion for our neighbors. And there is so much challenge in the world right now. I know several of you have been following the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. It seems like a large portion of this country has. In case you hadn't heard, the closing arguments are to be made tomorrow, and after that, the jury will deliberate to settle on a verdict. The country is holding its breath to see that justice is possible. In the midst of all this, a whole series of police brutality has come to light in social media. This isn't time to bury our heads in the sand. It's also not time to jump into the deep end if we're not yet ready. We can be intentional about how we engage the world compassionately. This person has experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering just like me. This person has experienced moments of peace, joy, and happiness just like me. This person wishes to be healthy and loved just like me. The struggle is to visit the challenging situation as long as we can and as deeply as we can without being overwhelmed, and then backing away a little bit. It's a dance of maintaining our sense of self and addressing the brokenness in the world. Over time, we build our capacity to be in the midst of suffering while maintaining a sense of self. Choosing when and how to engage in this type of challenge is a huge piece of privilege. Some folks can't choose how and when to engage. But for those of us who have a choice, how to engage with the brokenness of the world around us, strategic, mindful, compassionate engagement is the way to begin to build the world we dream about. We can't make meaningful change in the world unless we're willing to get close enough to the issue to be changed ourselves. Amen. Our benediction is one of my favorites. It's from Wayne Arneson. He says, "Take courage, friend. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace. Let the light within you be a blessing to the world."